All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Ohio Department of Transportation's Office of Transit State Fiscal Year 2026 Programs Application Workshop. We're excited to kick this process off with you again this year, as this is an annual process. We're going to start off just by going through some overall introductions of the staff, what to expect during the application period, and what to expect during this workshop throughout this day as well, and some housekeeping items. So I already confirmed, but I just want to confirm again before I talk for another 10 minutes before folks tell me that they can't hear me. I just want to make sure everybody can hear me and you can see my screen okay. If you could just let me know in the chat. Um, all right, awesome. Thank you, Ashley. So we should be good to go. So we're just going to jump on in. We've got a lot to get through today. So some general staff introductions. I know some of the folks in the room have worked with us previously, some have not, some haven't for a little bit. So just a general overview of our Office of Transit. I like to say we're small but mighty. This just gives you a general overview of how we're set up internally and who you may or may not be working with depending on the awards that you are awarded. So as you can see with Office of Transit, we are located in the Division of Planning in the Ohio Department of Transportation. Our fearless administrator, Chuck Dyer, is seen here up at the top. Our office is split up into 3 different sections. The first one is the Program Management section, which is the section that I oversee. The other one is the Compliance and Planning section, which Sarah Walton oversees, and the Financial Management section, which Amy Chang oversees. So this is just to give you a general overview of how the office is set up and who you may or may not be working with in the future. This is also available online should you have any questions about who to contact or who to reach out to if you have specific program questions in the future. So just some housekeeping items. This workshop is currently being recorded and a link will be shared for future use. So you'll be able to go back and look through the different types of projects and some of the best practices we're going to go through today when submitting applications. A frequently asked questions document will be distributed with the questions and answers that we get throughout the workshop process today. So you'll have access to those as well. All participants are muted, so please submit any of your questions in the chat box throughout the duration of the workshop. So all participants are muted and are unable to turn on their videos as well, just so we can ensure that we don't have any weird internet issues or any background noise going through the application workshop process. So by the end of this workshop, participants should understand the steps in the application process for ODOT funding, how to submit project applications. We'll go through each project application and what to expect, best practices for grant applications, and required documents and planning to consider when you're starting to think about what you're going to apply for and what you need to have ready to apply. So today, workshop agenda, it's going to be from 9 all the way until 4 o'clock. We've got a long day ahead of us. However, you only need to attend the projects that you intend to apply for. So as attendees, you may hop on or hop off this training, depending on the areas of interest of your organization. There's no lobby, so you should be able just to log off and then log back on at the times for the projects that you're interested in submitting for. Should a section conclude early, the workshop will pause until the indicated time on the agenda prior to starting the next section. That way, if we have folks that hop off and are going to hop back on again, they don't miss anything. So we're never going to move ahead throughout the duration of today. And all attendees, again, are restricted from unmuting and turning on their cameras. So please use the chat for any questions or comments or anything that comes throughout the day. So we're going to start today with a general introduction, just information that every applicant should know and be aware of and what to expect. Then we're going to go to computer hardware, computer software, and equipment projects. From there, we'll take a break. Then we'll jump into operating projects. Then we'll take a quick lunch break. And then we'll do preventative maintenance projects, rolling stock projects or vehicles from 1 to 1:45. We'll take another quick break. And then in the afternoon, we'll jump into mobility management and planning projects, alternative fueling, bus shelter and facility rehabilitation projects, fixed guideway and or rail car replacement, and intercity bus projects. So this schedule should be also attached to the Teams invite that you received. So you should have access to it throughout the day, so you can double check and verify when the times are that you would need to hop back on or hop back off, depending on what you plan on applying for. So the state fiscal year 2026 funding application cycle, this is from start to finish. So you can see you all are here now at the application workshop that we're hosting today so that we can educate potential applicants on how to access and complete all the applications. This means that you have already submitted and been deemed eligible through the letter of intent process in September. So if you are an agency on here that did not submit a letter of intent in the September process, you will be ineligible to apply for the state fiscal year. However, you are welcome to attend this just to know what to expect for this next round. After this, the application workshop next week, the application will open and it will remain open for 8 weeks until December 31st at 4 p.m. So you have about exactly 2 months to finish all of the applications that you want to submit. Please note that no applications will be accepted after that deadline of December 31st at 4 p.m. Following December 31st with the application closing, from January to March, our office will work through our internal processes and wait for the state biennium budget to pass at the end of March before we can make any type of award announcements. We're hoping to make those as soon as possible to you as we kind of are starting to get up against the state fiscal year in the April-May area and hopefully be able to submit awards to you and what was awarded and what was not awarded. From there, if you were awarded, then we'll host a program kickoff meeting. We'll come and talk about what to expect in the upcoming state fiscal year, and then we'll issue contracts so that you can begin on your projects. So we're still here in the beginning at the application workshop, and then from there, we'll open the application and see where we go from there. So an overview of the available funding for state fiscal year 2026. Federal funding that is ODOT administered. These will vary. These are estimations, so please keep that in mind. But for the Rural Transit Program federal funding, we have about $32 million available. For the Bus and Bus Facilities Program, or 5339, it's typically about $4 million. The Specialized Transportation Program, or the 5310 program, is about $6 million. The Ohio Transportation Partnership Program, or OTP2, $33 million. And the Ohio Workforce Mobility Partnership Program is to be determined. And if it is included in the budget again, it will be a separate application for 2026. It won't be part of this one, kind of like how it is now. But please note, as of today, the Ohio biennium budget has not been passed for state fiscal year 2026 and 2027, so these numbers may change. For state funding that's ODOT administered, for the Rural Transit Program, or 5311, it's about $7.7 million. For Specialized Transportation Programs, about $0.5 million of state funding. The Urban Transit Program, $23 million. And the Ohio Transportation Partnership Program, OTP2, is about $4.9 million. But again, please note, as of today, the Ohio biennium budget has not been passed for state fiscal year 2026 and state fiscal year 2027, so this is subject to change. So some information every applicant should know as we get into this process. So the applications are projects based, so it's not going to be program based. So what that means is applicants no longer determine the program best suited for their needs. Instead, applicants request projects, and then ODOT program staff play matchmaker to the available funds. So we'll match you to the programs that best fit your projects. So by qualifying projects for as many funding sources as possible, ODOT can leverage federal and state funding together to fund as many projects as possible. We can break down communication barriers between program staff and understand more holistically statewide need of program dollars. And we can make sure projects are best matched to the funding source that allows them the most flexibility and opportunity for success. So this is how we did it last year. For those folks that applied last year, it's not going to be any different. But for folks that may not have applied last year and are just jumping kind of back in, it's no longer programs based, it's projects based based on the projects that you're applying for. So in total, the applications are hosted via FormStack. I know everybody loves FormStack, so no need to put that in the chat how much you love it. But there are 16 total applications for projects. So there's 16 different projects you can apply for. So the first one, which we're going to talk about in this session with me, is the applicant organizational information we'll get through. We have an alternative fueling infrastructure, bus shelter and transit waiting environments, computer hardware and software, expansion vehicles, equipment, facility acquisition, rehab and renovation, fixed guideway and rail car replacement, intercity bus, mobility management and call centers, operating assistance, preventative maintenance, replacement vehicles, planning, contracted transportation services, which is for 5310 only, and regional mobility planning. So there's multiple different projects for you to apply for, and each one has its own application. So applicant organization information. Everyone who is applying for any project needs to submit this part of the application. So everybody who's applying for 1 project, 10 projects, 2 projects, 0 well, 0 projects you wouldn't have to, but anything over 0, you need to submit this applicant organization information form stack. So this will be the first one that you'll apply for. So from there, then you can apply for the projects that you intend to. So whichever projects that you want to apply for, then you'll be open to applying for those. So how do you access the application? So accessing the application, you can access it 2 ways. So we're going to send out an email that will be sent out to everybody who, one, was listed in the letter of intent process as the person that submitted the letter of intent, and those who are attending this meeting today will be sent out on November 1st when the application opens. That will include a link to the applications and a link to all of the resources and the templates that we have for the application. Additionally, you can access on November 1st via the ODOT Office of Transit website. So there's a link on here when we send this out after the meeting. We'll also send this out on that November 1st with the email, so you'll have access to all the links within this presentation as well. Should for whatever reason you not see an email come through, or you're not seeing where on the website you can access the application, please let us know as soon as possible. You can reach out to us via our shared office email, transit.programs@ohio.gov. So just let us know if you have any trouble finding it on November 1st when it opens up. So another way to access the application, and this is going to be my recommendation to you all, is the one checklist to rule them all. So we have a state fiscal year 2026 checklist. It includes links to each application page and a list of required and expected documentation for each, so that you have a general idea of what to expect before you jump into each application. So that checklist will be sent with the application open email, and it will be available on the Office of Transit website as well, so that you can download it at any time throughout the process. So this is just an overview of what that checklist will look like. So as you can see, it has the due date on here. It has the contact email if you have any questions. It has links to the templates and forms and resources that you may or may not need to use throughout the application process. And then from there, it will go down and list out each project and the attachments that you may or may not need. So this part right here will be linked to the form stack. So you'll be able just to click on this link and it will take you to that application. All of them are exactly like this. So when you get to the checklist, all you'll need to do is click on whichever one you want to apply for, and it will take you directly to the form stack that you want to submit. And then you can just use these. This is for reference. This isn't something you need to fill out or need to use necessarily. It's just something to help guide you along the way as you submit your applications for funding. And again, this will be available on the website, and we'll email it out to you on November 1st when the applications are open. So application templates, we do provide a number of different templates for you throughout the process. These can include budget narratives, independent cost estimate templates, vehicle cost worksheets, authorizing resolution samples, application certification forms, and local match certification forms, just to name a few. These can be accessed online throughout the duration of the application period, and it'll look like this. So you'll have access to all of these. You can simply click on the links and download the templates that you may or may not need to use depending on what you're applying for. So this should be easy enough, but just for reference, these are available to you and will be made available to you throughout the entire application period. So some things to consider before you start on your application. So one application will be submitted for each applicant for each project type being requested. So the only exception for this is projects that will take place in a rural versus an urban area. So for example, if TART is applying for funds to maintain service in Toledo, however, they're also seeking funds to provide rural service in Lucas County, TARTA would submit one application for projects being delivered in the urban area, and then a separate application for projects in the rural area. And why? That's just because ODOT has separate funding dedicated for urban areas versus rural areas. So having the projects separate, it really assists us in the review and selection process of that funding. So just something to keep in mind. And as you're going through FormStack, all applications can be saved and returned to. So there's a save and return button you'll click, and then you'll get a link where you can go back and it should pick up right where you left off. However, application attachments cannot be saved. So if you are uploading attachments and you're not submitting the application, you're just saving it to return to it. When you go to return to it, any attachments that you had on there when you saved it will no longer be there. So you'll have to re-upload them. So just keep that in mind. So in order to make that as easy as possible, possible, all attachments are located at the end of each application. So that way, by the time you get to the end, that'll be the last thing you need to do is upload those attachments on there. So we should hopefully avoid that, but just keep that in mind. When utilizing Save and Resume, make sure you have data backed up somewhere, because there have been cases of lost information in the past, and unfortunately we may not be able to revive any of that information for you should it get lost in the Save and Resume process. Multiple people can access the application through the Save and Resume link. However, only one person should access any specific form at a time, just to ensure we don't have any kind of weird, internet things happen. And there should always be a confirmation email upon submission. So when you submit an application, you should get a confirmation email that also has an attachment of what you submitted. So that way you have that for your records as well. So application basics. So there is some required information throughout this process. So some information and attachments are required. So FormStack will not let you submit an application if a required field or attachment is not complete or uploaded. Required fields are notated with an asterisk. So as you can see right here, if it has an asterisk after it, that means that you are required to either fill out this portion or to upload this file. So some things are required and some things are not, but please just keep that in mind as you go through the applications. So several different types of transit systems and agencies apply through this application. So as we go through screenshots of what to expect during the application, please keep in mind not all or additional information or attachments may be needed. It really depends on your agency and what you're applying for. So there's logic within the forms that will either add or hide fields based on different answers you give to questions. So for example, urban systems, you may need to provide MPO and PID information. Specialized transportation systems may need to provide coordinated planning inclusion information. And rural transit may need to provide previous funding or compliance information to our office that other agencies may not. So just keep in mind that it may not look exactly how we're presenting it to you today, depending on your agency and what you're applying for, but it's just to give you a general idea. So don't freak out if it doesn't look exactly like it does in our presentation today, but please feel free to reach out to us with any questions or concerns along the way. Okay, so some things to consider. So some common reasons for application returns that we have are that the wrong attachments are uploaded or not complete. What we'll do is we'll reach out to you and let you know that what was uploaded is not complete or accurate, and we'll need you to redo it. The amounts don't match funding requests and supporting documentation. For example, if you submit a vehicle cost worksheet for $80,000, but then your application is only asking for $60,000, it doesn't match, and we may need to reject that application and try again. Independent cost estimates are completed incorrectly. This is a very common one. We'll talk about those a little more in depth during the next session. And the authorizing resolution has not signed all documents. So please make sure that all the documents that need to be signed are signed by the correct people before you upload them. So once again, reference that checklist. That checklist is there to provide guidance and help you along the way, and to plan ahead for what you may or may not need as you jump into the application process. So one thing to make sure, this is a common reason that applications are rejected, is make sure that the authorizing resolution references all programs. So you can see here in this box for federal and state grants administered by ODOT Office of Transit. So in that resources webpage that I showed earlier, we do offer an authorizing resolution sample that you can utilize that does include this language. But if you're creating your own, or if you're using one that your agency typically uses, once again, please just make sure that it references all programs in that authorizing resolution. So that way we can make sure we're covering everything that we need to. So consider the timeline to complete the application. You have 8 weeks. Certain documents may require advanced board or commissioner approval, such as the authorizing resolution. Please keep that in mind when you're thinking about your own internal timeline of getting these applications completed. Don't wait until the last day. We're going to try our best to answer as many questions as they come in, but we can't guarantee a response on the day that it's due or on the the very last day, but we will definitely try our best. But please don't wait until the last day. There's always things that come up that you may not expect throughout the application, and account for technical issues, outages, illnesses, things like that. So once again, no applications will be accepted after December 31st at 4 p.m. All of the applications will be closed at that time, and you'll no longer have access to them. So one thing to consider also as you go through this is scalability. So scalability of a project does not mean an increased chance that your project will be funded at the minimum funding amount identified. We understand that not all projects are scalable, and that's completely okay. But if a project is scalable, it's important to include it in the application. It could be the difference between an award to fund portions of the project or not at all. And it really helps the project reviewers understand your project funding ranges, if there's any range that you may or may not be able to be funded. Um, so funding requests historically surpass the funding available to award, so please keep that in mind, that we definitely get more requests than the funding that we have available. So providing a scalability amount doesn't mean that that's what we'll give you, but it does give us a little bit more to work with in terms of what we may be able to provide for you if we cannot provide the full amount. So some scalability examples. So one example is the original project request is $100,000. The minimum funding amount that they could use is $20,000. And how will that change the scope of the project? Any amount of funding will assist ABC Transit in purchasing and installing bus shelters along the new Route 8. ABC Transit will just install fewer shelters with less funding. So that's an example of one scalability. Another one is an original project request for $300,000, and then they indicate the minimum funding amount is $150,000. So what does that mean for your project if the minimum funding amount is received instead of the original request? Just means less funding means that ABC Transit will repair either the asphalt or concrete, not both, or perhaps repair one side of the lot at a time. And a couple more scalability examples. If original project request is $300,000 and the minimum funding identified as $100,000, how will that change the scope? Well, ABC Transit will fund a mobility management program with less mobility specialists or additional staff, which will then increase project milestone timelines. And just another scalability example for you to choose. So just something to think about as you start to think about your different projects and what may or may not be scalable for your agency in terms of the projects that you intend to apply for. And then considering other impacted projects. So some obvious examples of this might be something like equipment and software request, but applicants are encouraged to consider other connections. So for example, expansion vehicles and preventative maintenance funds. If you apply for expansion vehicles and preventative maintenance funds that include those expansion vehicles, if those expansion vehicles aren't awarded, how will that affect your preventative maintenance budget? Shop equipment and preventative maintenance. So if you're planning to add equipment that will allow for servicing vehicles in-house, if that's not approved, will that affect your maintenance budget? Operating assistance in planning projects. If a planning project to consider service efficiencies isn't approved, will that impact the operating budget? And rolling stock and equipment. So for example, if you aren't awarded all the vehicles being requested, does that impact the equipment quantities that you're applying for? So just something to keep in mind. I know there's a lot of cross-referencing here with all these different projects, but just keep that in mind as you start to go through the application. So some general project information to expect, and we're going to get really down into the meat and potatoes of this throughout the day, but just a general overview for everybody. What to expect will be your local match sources. So this is unique for each project type. And this is where agencies will identify what local match sources will be used for the project and the amount contributed from each source. The total should match the total local share for the project type. Some information to expect, of course, is going to be funding needed. And again, unique for each project. This is where you're going to request the amount of funding that you need from the Ohio Department of Transportation. And then ODOT will then decide which resources to make available for the project that you submit. Scalability, which we talked about, again, unique for each project. And this is where applicants will determine if the project is scalable. And are other projects impacted if the project is not funded? So again, unique for each project, but something to think about as you have multiple different applications that you are submitting for different things. Some additional information to expect: partnership and community impact. This again is unique for each applicable project type. So applicants will be asked to demonstrate how the project addresses ridership and accessibility. Additionally, they'll provide information on any agencies partnering on the project. Project planning, which again, unique for each project. So applicants may be asked if the project is included in any planning initiatives, such as coordinated plans, tip documentation, transportation development plans, etc. Project milestones and outcomes, unique for each project when applicable. Applicants will be asked to define how they will determine the project is successful. And then vehicle project information, again, unique for each project. In addition to the other project information above, applicants will be asked to identify estimated mileage, trips, service hours, vehicle type, replacement vehicle information, and service type when available. So with that, we can jump into the first application that all applicants are required to submit. So this is going to be called the Applicant Organization Information Application. So once again, all applicants need to submit the Applicant Organization Information Form. The form gathers information specific to the organization, and this will include the legal name, address, service area, program contacts, service statistics, project planning, compliance acknowledgments, etc. And the information included on this form is utilized throughout the program year, so it's important that the information provided is accurate and up to date. So the applicant organization information form will look exactly like this. This is how it's going to start. So just some general information to start with. So the legal name of your organization, if you're doing business as a different organization, department name, division name, your business address, the primary county of service, additional counties served, detailed description of your service area, agency type, and does your organization operate public transit service utilizing Section 5311 and or 537 funding. From there, we'll go into the primary service area. You'll need to indicate where your primary service area is, your employer tax identification number, your unique entity identifier, which is on sam.gov. Please note here that if your sam.gov registration says ID assigned, then that means you are not fully registered. We do require all applicants to be fully registered in sam.gov, so please double check that. If it does say ID assigned, then you need to take the next step to make sure that you are fully registered in sam.gov. Your OAKS vendor number, please contact Shared Services if you're unsure of your OAKS vendor information. We have the email and the phone number right here. And the address code, which also is connected to your OAKS vendor number. Again, if you're unsure of what that is, we have the email and the phone number to reach out to Ohio Shared Services so that you can figure that out should you need to. So there are going to be some compliance requirement acknowledgments. So if your agency did not receive funding from ODOT for the state fiscal year 2025 program year, you will be considered a new applicant. So you'll need to agree to attend an in-person training in June, and you'll need to verify that you understand the compliance expectations and responsibilities that come with accepting an award. So this can include technical assistance reviews or compliance reviews, required policies and procedures that you may need to get put into place before a contract is issued to your agency, 2 CFR 200 requirements that you'll need to go through, and federal and state certifications and assurances. So this is just to give you a general overview of what will be expected of your agency should an award be offered to you through this process. So then we'll jump into the applicant contact information. So it's easy enough. Agencies can choose up to 5 agency contacts, including programmatic contact, compliance contact, administrative contact, fiscal contact, and other. If you are a current 5311 subrecipient, you will see an additional contact box for your agency's current drug and alcohol program manager. But this is what this will look like, and you can choose up to 5. And then you'll kind of click what the responsibility of that contact is. And then this is a very important part of the application, as this is where, if you are awarded, we're going to pull your contact information depending on what we're asking for or requesting. So please make sure that this is as up to date as possible. So a Smart Sheets update. So earlier this year, ODOT created Smart Sheet profiles for all current 5311 subrecipients. These profiles already include a contacts list that can be updated by the agency. So via form stack logic, you'll see an option to confirm that your agency currently has a Smart Sheets profile. If you click yes, then you will not have the option to fill out the contacts portion of the form, but you will need to verify the information that in your Smart Sheets profile is up to date and current. So please keep that in mind. If you're a 5311 subrecipient and have a Smart Sheet profile, it will look a little bit different, and we'll pull your contact information off of your Smart Sheets profile instead of requesting it through this application process. Then everyone is required to fill out their authorizing official. The authorizing official must match the information listed on the authorizing resolution that will be attached at the end of this form. So this information is utilized when, if awarded, contacts are sent for signature. Should an authorizing official change or expect to be changed by June of 2025, this information will need to be shared with ODOT in order to update our database and ensure that signatures are sent to the correct individual. So just make sure that this matches your authorizing resolution and who's signing those forms throughout the application process. So if you're a public transportation entity, this is where your agency will indicate here which specific projects that you intend to apply for. You can mark several different projects here for all the projects that you intend to apply for. In the past, there was a requirement to prioritize the projects, but that's no longer the case, so nothing else is going to pop up depending on what you click. And then please note some of the following changes here with some of the project information for public transit entities. Alternative fueling infrastructure is open for urban systems only. Facility acquisition is also open for urban systems only. There's been a removal of the pilot/demonstration projects application. Instead, we've included a planning application, and we've included a separate regional mobility management program application. So that's going to look a little different from last time for our public transit entities. So for specialized transit, these are the eligible projects that you can apply for. So again, your agency will indicate here which specific projects you intend to apply for. You can mark several different projects. In the past, agencies again were required to prioritize projects. You'll no longer need to do that. And please note some of the changes here. So again, the removal of the pilot/demonstration projects, inclusion of planning, inclusion of regional mobility management programs, and there's a new application that's separate for 5310 only contracted transportation services. So the organizational profile comes next in this application process. If you're a rural public transit system, this is what it will look like for you. This section completes information about your current system. So this includes peak hours of service, which refers to the time period that your transportation program experiences peak revenue vehicle usage. If your agency is a designated grantee, you'll be required to upload a designated grantee letter and state the expiration date here. And if your agency utilizes a third-party operations provider or providers, you'll be required to provide the information about all those different providers right after this last section here. If you are a specialized transportation agency applying, this section will look like this for you of your organization profile. So again, we'll have the peak hours of service, which refers to the time period that your transportation program experiences peak revenue vehicle usage. If your agency utilizes a third-party provider, ODOT will reach out to you during the application review period for this information. So you won't have to fill it in through this process, but we'll reach out to you separately for that information should you use a third-party operator. This is for rural public transit and specialized transit. The next section is going to ask you about incidental use. So your agency will need to indicate if it is currently providing incidental use of FTA-funded property. If so, you'll need to provide a description of the incidental use, indication that ODOT and FDA have approved this use, if income is generated from the incidental use, and then upload ODOT's concurrence letter of the incidental use at the end of the application. Then we'll jump into service statistics. This is for rural public transit agencies. So your agency will need to provide service statistics for the last calendar year, which is calendar year 2023. So ODOT staff will cross-check the data with NTD reporting. Make sure that you're not including your contract trips and the general public trips provided. And this section is greatly reduced from the state fiscal year 2025 application. So if it looks a little bit shorter, it's supposed to be. So just no concerns with that there, should you notice that. From there, for our rural public transit and specialized transportation systems, we'll jump into our 2 CFR 200. This is just an informational process of what to expect should you be awarded, and then an acknowledgement for your agency that you understand the expectations of 2 CFR 200 documentation and process that you'll need to go through in order to be considered eligible for the award in the contract should you be awarded. So again, if awarded, all subrecipients of ODOT's Office of Transit Administering Cost Reimbursement Grants are required to submit documentation to ODOT's Office of External Audits on an annual basis. So the required documentation and information that must be submitted is dependent on the type of agency, the type of award, and the type of budget submitted. So it will really depend and be a little bit different for everybody, but this is just to give you a general overview. And then you need to acknowledge, that you accept that you'll have to undergo this process should you be awarded. And then for urban public transit systems who are applying, urban and small urban systems will need to provide allocation amounts for federal fiscal year 2023 and allocation amounts that are not currently obligated nor in a pending grant. So just a heads up that you'll need to provide that information to us in this part of the application. So from there, we'll get at the end of the application, like we said, all the attachments are going to be there so that you can just upload everything at the very end. So please note required attachments. So again, if you see the asterisk, they are required. And then underneath, if you see ODOT template, that indicates that a template is available on the resources webpage. So as you can see, you have the authorizing resolution, which is a requirement, the most recent agency audit. So please note that 2 CFR 200 was recently updated. So previously the threshold that required a single agency audit was increased from $750,000 to $1 million. However, this is not retroactive. So if you're a non-federal entity that expended $750,000 or more during the non-federal entity's fiscal year in federal awards, you must have a single or program-specific audit conducted for that year in accordance with the provisions of this part. So if you meet that threshold, then you'll need to upload that single audit, that single agency audit. For agencies that did not meet that $750,000 threshold, then you'll need to upload a recent audit or your IRS Form 990. So please just keep that in mind. And again, we tried to keep that information on the application for you should you have any questions along the way. There's an application certification. So again, there's an ODOT template for that. Your local match certification, which there's an ODOT template for that. So again, you'll find that on that resources page. And then a few other things that you'll need to upload here. So just take note that the local match certification here is going to include all of the projects that you intend to apply for, and it must match the local match amounts that you submit for each project. So it's going to carry through all of the different project applications that you're submitting. So with that, it looks like we have about 9 minutes left. Are there any questions about what to expect during this first part of the application process? And again, if you have any questions, just drop them in the chat for us. Okay, so Doreen, I see yours. Can you apply for 5310 and 5311 if you qualify? Again, you're applying just for projects. So you'll apply for an operating project, and then ODOT staff will place you in either 5310 or 5311, depending on what you're applying for. So you will do that back end part, but you just apply for the project that you're interested in. And then I see Spencer was able to answer Dee's question. Thank you, Spencer. And then Catherine, what project category are e-expansion vehicles and replacement vehicles under? So expansion vehicles and replacement vehicles are under rolling stock. Rolling stock is a federal term that FTA uses for vehicles, so please keep that in mind. Okay, and another question. If applying for a handicap bus for a program for adults and developmental disabilities, which project or training should I attend today? Once again, rolling stock is a federal term for vehicles. If you are applying for vehicles, you need to attend the rolling stock session, which will be, there you go, from 1 to 1:45. Okay, Patty Olmstead, since mobility management does have a budget yet, is there a chance the program will not be continued? Patty, mobility management does have a budget. It's just not separated out. So it is included in those total amounts for the 5310 program that we looked through in the beginning. So we just didn't separate it out. So there is a budget for that program. And then Marla, if you are wanting to expand into another county, do you put that on the applicant organization form? Marla, no, you don't need to put that on that form. You can if you want to in the other sections, but really that's going to come up when you apply for either operating or expansion vehicles is where we'll see that if you're expanding. Okay, well, if there are no more questions, yep, thank you, Kira. Okay, so it looks like we've got about 7 minutes until we jump into the next session, which is computer hardware, computer software, and equipment projects. We're going to be on here for those 7 minutes. So should you think of any questions as we wait for 9:45, please just drop them in the chat and then we'll answer them as they come through. So with that, we'll jump back in again at 9:45. Thank you, everybody.